for more on the 2025 matric results. We're joined by Naptosa Executive Director, that's Basil Manuel, and Governing Body Foundation CEO, Marna. Thank you very much to the both of you for your time this evening. I will start with you, Basil. Let's, just reflect on this particular increase on the matric results. What is your reaction?
Good evening, and thanks for having me, and good evening, Marna. At first, I'm pleased that there has been an increase, but the very small increase is actually a good sign. It shows a maturing system. It shows that the system has matured greatly, particularly insofar as assessment is concerned. Because if you had a 5% increase, it would sound nice, but it would be ridiculous because of the size of our system. Our system, and even if you look at a 1% increase in performance, it's a huge number of learners that we are talking about. It's not a very small number. So that is about a maturing system, both in terms of the entire education system, but also because of our assessment system. So I'm pleased with it.
And for you, Marna, what are your reflections?
Yes, I agree with what Basil is saying. I really must say that I'm very impressed with the results. But we all know that you cannot just keep on rising and rising the percentages. It's unnatural. So I truly think it is true that the system has now becoming more and more mature. And I think it's a balanced report card that is being achieved by the 2025 matric class. And I think there's a lot of reasons for us to be happy and to enjoy what we have, what they have achieved. However, I must say that that does not mean we are out of the woods. There is still a lot of work that needs to be done.
Yeah, Marna, the minister spoke about how matric is not just an event, it's a journey starting from the foundation phase. And a lot of it really has to deal with, outside of academics, how these schools are run, because ultimately they contribute to the well-being of the learners who ultimately then perform academically.
Yes, I fully agree with you. This is where the problem comes in. In particular, when we look at where we start now at the beginning of 2026, and we've got problems in the system with regards to not enough financial resources, and there's reason to worry about the amount of resources that we are going to get from the Department of Basic Education from the government this year. So that is reason to be concerned about. So, yeah, I think this is how I feel about it.
Yeah, and of course, for you, Basil, let's talk about the issue around just the improvement and upskilling of teachers. The minister saying that they had a target of about 10,000 when it comes to ECDs when we started 2025. And they exceeded that. They're quite pleased with that, which means that the capacitating of these schools would also be important, right?
Absolutely. And to carry on from where Marna left off, we've got to acknowledge that, in fact, the minister is at the point where we've been preaching all along to say, let's fix the bottom. Let's get the foundation right. And if we get the foundation right and we build a solid foundation, the top starts improving on its own. And there will be a lot of things that don't need to be done to artificially push there. And of course, when we look at grade R, it's one of the biggest challenges we have in 2026. And Marna speaks about the financial resources, and that's going to be our biggest challenge, because now we've registered more than 10,000 preschools or little schools. And remember, they are privately registered at the moment, and there's a process in place. Now we've got to train the teachers, we've got to equip those schools, and then we've got to slowly transition those learners into formal grade R's in primary schools over time. And it's not 1 year or 5 years, it will take much longer. But all this is money intensive. And if we don't have that financial support, we start losing traction on those issues.
Yeah, there's also that link, Basil, between, the school nutrition program and how learners perform, which ultimately, contributes to also how they perform. Let's talk about that.
And let me take it a little further. The minister made an important point about 18-year-olds that lose the state grant and how they have dropped off in performance. Now, if that is happening at an 18-year-old level, can you imagine if you are not giving the grade ones, the grade R's, and primary school children that support when it comes to the feeding scheme? That feeding scheme system is enormously important, and we've got to protect it against all these miscreants that try and put their grubby hands on things like that. We've got to ensure that every child gets that balanced meal. I can tell you, as a former principal of a primary school, that that was a critical part of schooling, and we must retain it. But we must also look at that cutting off of school-going children from the grant system and the impact that it has. That point we will support the minister on as well.
Yeah, Marna, school governing bodies often find themselves also getting involved in the day-to-day running of the schools. And one problem that the minister is highlighting is how the boy child is left behind. Let's talk about how they're being socialized within the schooling environment.
Yes, look, I think the role of the parent is increasingly becoming very important. Because if all the stakeholders don't pull together, the system will not go any further. It will just weaken instead of strengthening. With regards to the boy child, I think the problem lies in a way, and that's a worry, because we lose many of the boys as well. There are way too many unlawful things happening. Let's think about the fact of the gangsterism that's taking place, the problem of alcohol in certain areas where schools are. And I don't want to elaborate too much on that, but that is part of what is happening to the boy child not going through with the system. The other thing is also that we should realize that psychologically, the boy child lags behind the girl child for quite some time. It's only when they reach 18 years and older that the boy child catches up and they actually then begin to perform at the level that one can expect from them. So I really think it is very important that schools, and in this instance then governing bodies, go to great lengths to ensure that the management of the school and the way in which discipline is being exercised in the institution, that is being sharpened up so that we can make sure that we can get the children, and in particular now in this instance, then the boy child, also back into a classroom. You know, the education system needs teachers and learners inside the classroom, busy working, and then we will keep on having these phenomenal results that we have this year of not a single district having a below 80% pass rate. That is quite something.
Yeah, you touch on an important aspect of the involvement of parents. And we know that some of the education happens at home, and the minister reflecting on, the breakdown in the culture of reading. How important is that in terms of ensuring that learners are able to read for meaning and understanding, especially, at foundation phase?
It is very important. Reading is the pillar on which everything in education rests. So it is really important that parents also come to the party and that we make sure that we put everything in place to help the learner. But then we must be realistic. There are a vast number of parents who can't afford reading material or themselves don't have the capacity to help the learner, which then immediately places the emphasis on the school. Because the school in the grade R and in the foundation phase, they will need to make sure that a lot is being done when it comes to reading. And I think if we can get everybody to, it's wonderful. We all walk in, in our hands, we have a computer, which is our cell phone. But if we cannot read, and if we cannot make meaning out of what we read and use that in our academic performances, then it's a fruitless exercise. So I really think that it is important that schools and parents come together and find best ways of getting the child, even just by reading them a good night story at night will help. So that is very, very important.
Yeah, Marna and Basil, I'm going to ask you to hang 10. Welcome back. You're still watching News Feed PM, the late edition. I'm Linda Mnisi. We continue with our conversation this evening on the 2025 matric results, and we're still joined by Naptosa Executive Director, that's Basil Manuel, and Governing Body Foundation CEO Marna Jordan. Thank you so much for staying on the line for us. And I'll come back to you, Basil, because before we went to the minister, I was talking to Marna about the importance of involving, families and parents in the culture of reading. And there, in those reflections by the minister, she also touches on this important aspect of children being able to read at a particular level in their education, which means they're better able to also take the gateway subjects. Talk to us about that, Basil.
Thank you, Linda. First of all, let me go back to the resource-hungry households versus the resource-rich households, where books and things lie around in certain houses, magazines, not so many newspapers these days. And that makes a big difference. But how do we compensate for that? We compensate by having books at school and, of course, the readers, etc. Now, as soon as you talk financial constraints and cutting of budgets, etc., that means that schools are not acquiring the same number of books that they ought to. In grade 1, children have to cover, I think it is 22 books that they must read. Okay, the first book has 2 pages, but if the schools can't send those books home so that parents can read with the children, what do you think happens? The children just don't ever read. And it becomes hugely problematic. So once you've mastered reading, every other subject makes sense. Just imagine getting to grade 4 and you can't read. Now, for the first time, you are facing geography and history as separate subjects. Okay, we combine them, but now you're talking geography, and this person can't even read. So how are they going to progress beyond that? And that's the challenge. So it's about teaching reading. And we do have a number of teachers teaching outside of their training. In other words, people who haven't been trained in the foundation phase are teaching there. These are good salt of the earth people who have taken up posts. They are placed there. But if we don't retrain them and assist them with teaching reading, reading's not going to improve in that school, because you can't walk into a class and suddenly say, take out your books and let's read, and everybody will sing along with you. It doesn't work like that. Reading is a methodology that must be taught to teachers. So that is the second issue. So it's resources and the teachers, and having teachers have the skills, and of course the money issue that we mustn't forget. Today in matric, we can deal with resource-hungry places because teachers make a plan. It's not the same in the junior primary school.
Yeah, the issue around these gateway subjects relating to, a high number of learners uptaking, but the minister raising a concern about how that high intake or uptake of those gateway subjects does not really match the results. Let's also talk about that high intake or uptake matching the skills and the capacity in terms of teachers who are skilled, who are able to better help these students in order to, of course, succeed in those gateway subjects.
The minister makes an important point. You can't simply just shift children into a subject like pure maths if the child is really not suited to pure maths, because the child's ability level is more with other forms of mathematics. And this is extremely important for us to ensure that is the first step. But we must also take a lesson from this. There are many people, many schools who've shepherded children into maths literacy because they wanted better pass rates. Now, that type of nonsense has to stop because we are limiting the life chances of our children. It can't only be about the pass percentage. And Umalusi raised this issue and did acknowledge that the department has been working at this gatekeeping. Now, gatekeeping takes various forms. Some children weren't allowed to write so because they may bring the pass percentage down, but some children are pushed into what seems to be the easier subject, and their life chances change forever. We need to stop that practice as well. And since we have a minister that seems to have seen this and noted it, and we have district managers that have pulled rabbits out of the hat and seen that every one of the districts is above 80%. Now we need to attend to the quality of the passes, which goes hand in hand with ensuring that more and more children take these very important subjects.
Yeah, Marna, and Basil touches on another important aspect of the support by district. The district does not only provide support in terms of academics, but also in relation to the schooling environment itself.
Yes, most definitely. Look, the psychosocial support that is needed in schools is also something that needs to be taken into consideration. And then the districts have to support the schools on more levels than just only getting matric results. So nutrition is very important. Transport to the school is very important. Then once again, I'm coming back to it. At the school level itself, we need schools that are really well organized, good discipline structures, and quality teaching and learning that is taking place in the institution. And I think the support coming from districts on these aspects has increased. And that is part of why the results are looking the way they are looking now. So, and I think what is also important is that during the time when we celebrate matric results, we seem to think it's all the work is being done by the grade 12 educator. And that's not true. Mm-hmm. It started with the grade 1 educator and in some instances the grade R. So I think we need to also say congratulations to every primary school, because if the primary school did not lay the foundation, we would not be in the position we are in tonight to celebrate some good results for 2025. So I must say that I think it's important that the support that the district gives, and I think that is what happened, is that the level of the support has increased, and that has directly contributed to better results.
Yeah, and the minister saying that some of the schools that have become synonymous with excellence are the no-fee paying schools. And some of those schools are in communities that are plagued by crime, by high unemployment rates. But in those circumstances, those learners thrive. Let's talk about how those societal issues have an impact on learners' performance.
Yes, that is extremely important. It has a great impact on them, because if you are confronted with a household where you don't have, let's say, for example, you don't even have space where you can sit and prepare, do your homework, prepare your study work, prepare for examinations, it has got a huge impact a negative impact on you. But I think what I am picking up here is that the determination amongst the districts, the department, parents, learners themselves, and to me that is a big beacon of hope that we have in our country, because it seems as if we have begun to understand now what it is that we need to produce this kind of results and to give the quality of education that will open doors. But I think what is also important is that we must also bear into consideration the fact that not all learners need to go to a university. There are many other avenues that they can go down to. But back to the social economic environments that the children come from. I must say, I am actually in awe sometimes to see how parents and learners and schools can come up with ways and means to assist these learners. I know of schools where during the matric exams, learners come to the school and they live in the classroom with educators where they teach them afternoons, at night, during weekends, etc. So I think there's a huge task lying ahead that it would be wonderful if every school, or at least every district, could have more social workers, more psychologists that can also get involved and assist these communities. But listen, it's not only in the poorer community or the more disorganized community. I can tell you in the most affluent communities, the need for psychosocial need, welfare to be taken care of is increasing by the day. And I think this is where we also then need to take into consideration what the effect that this has on educators. So the educators are bearing a very heavy workload. And that is why I'm back to my point that if all stakeholders, which include the parents, can become involved, more involved, I think nothing is going to stop us with regards to what we can achieve.
Yeah, and the investment of time and these learners spending more time at schools with all these teachers, would you say that is a good opportunity for the education department to also invest in their well-being, their psychosocial well-being?
Yes, but what I would like to say is we must be careful that we don't overburden the educator. So what I do think is that the department needs to put structures in place to make sure that the educators also have enough support and that can help them to preserve their energy, their input in such a way that it goes towards giving better quality education to the learners. So I think here it's a challenge, because I don't think the department is going to just easily come up with these kind of assistance, because let's be honest, we've got nutritional programs, but in some provinces and some districts, it has not happened the way it was supposed to happen. And unless we cannot send a child to school hungry, because a hungry child is not going to be a child that is in a physical position of being able to learn. And I think that is something that needs our consideration. And we will have to take care of the welfare of the learners and the educators to preserve them for coming up with even better quality results.
Yeah, Basil, Marna speaks about the support for teachers, and we've seen some of them are complaining about the administrative burden, which also steals some time from the learning and teaching.
Absolutely. Let me add that Naptosa is very, very worried about the amount of time the average matric teacher is spending at school with extra classes, with weekend classes, with holiday classes, etc. It has a toll on the mental health of teachers. Besides, children can't spend all that amount of time at school. And we've challenged the department about this. We see the rationale for trying to improve results. However, it can't only be about the results. The children's mental health also needs to be looked after. So we need to look after the entire system better. And Umalusi has even raised the issue about these classes. It can't become the norm. The norm ought to be that in the normal class time, we take children through the full scope of what they are supposed to do. Now, many children are unable to do homework at home, etc. And those additional classes help. I want to acknowledge that. But we must be careful that the pendulum doesn't swing too far to the one side and we forget that there are children, that they that these children need time out, that these children need a balanced life, and so that these children, when they get to university, and there isn't this drumming in of work all the time, where they have the freedom to do certain things, that they still cope there as well. All this added together goes with the mental health of both the teachers and the learners, and we must preserve that.
Yeah, we've become almost obsessed, Basil, with bachelor passes. And the reality is more and more learners are getting bachelor passes, but not all of them are going to go into university. Let's talk about those that will be making it to university, the kind of learners that these institutions will be taking in.
Let me start here, Linda. And Marna touched on this earlier on. Not everybody has to go to a university. In fact, it's a bad idea because you come out of the university without the skill set to do certain things. You have the academic knowledge, and you can become an engineer by going through a TVET college. And we would have had all the practical experience there. And we need to improve our TVET colleges so that we have more people that are learning skills, because it is the skills which create jobs. With everybody going to university, we are soon going to have one of the highest rates of unemployed graduates, as we see already happening, because they are coming out of university with wonderful knowledge, a lot of background, but no skills. And we've got to try and find the happy medium. There are not enough places in the universities. And that's the other thing. And everybody will feel cheated if they have a bachelor's pass and they didn't get there. Now, the obsession with bachelors isn't a bad thing, because it's about an obsession with better quality. But better quality mustn't mean that the only pathway with a good quality pass is going into the universities. For the first time today, I heard a top performer from the independent schools saying, I want to become a teacher. Isn't that a wonderful thing that one of the top performers wanted to do that? Because this is where the needs are. And we need to be encouraging children to look at where they will find jobs before they look at these lovely sounding things, study them, spend a lot of money, a lot of effort, get beautiful results, and no job.
Yeah, and Marna, you know, Basil speaks about some going to TVET colleges, but there are those, even with quality passes, that will fall into the cracks and land up into our communities.
Yes, unfortunately, that is true. So I think what we need in the countries, and I think the training of artisans, for example, has fallen to the wayside a little bit. Maybe Basil is correct there in saying, you know, we got obsessed with the bachelor passes, which is very important. So I think unless we, in the country as a whole, unless we look at how are we going to use these matriculants that do not go to a university, what are we going to create? And that's the problem, because if we're not going to create jobs, we're going to sit with the problem. We're going to have educated children sitting at home, and that is not going to have any good results for the country or for anybody out there. So I think the education department, and here we can even bring in higher education, will have to look at creating more avenues and more possibilities for the matriculant that passed, that they can go to and get some form of training, and so they can acquire the necessary skills. And then there again, in the broader economy of our country, it is important that we as a country create opportunities, to determine where is the need, what kind of skills do we really need. And if we come to the community, we must say in the community, okay, all the children didn't go to university, didn't go to a TVET college, does not have any formal training further, but there are skills that we can, through various ways of teaching them, get them to be involved. Let's just take, for example, the whole issue of reading. How about a matriculant that can read well, but didn't go to a university or TVET college, but that student, that learner can read properly. How about that person getting involved in grade R or being an assistant in a school to help the little ones to read and read with understanding and read with the possibility of using what they have learned there in the analysis when they get to the classroom and they have to go and answer even mathematics and physical science questions, because it's interesting that people don't realize that you need to be able to read with understanding and comprehension if you want to perform in those subjects.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yes, I think that is something maybe that can be done.
Marna and Basil, I want to thank you so much for your time and for your incredible insights this evening as we reflect, of course, on the important subjects of, our matric results. Congratulations to the 2025 matric class, and thank you so much for your time. That is Basil Manuel, who is the Executive Director at Naptosa, as well as Marna Jordan, who is the CEO at the governing body foundation, joining us this evening to talk to us about that important conversation this evening.